How do we get from this to this? It's clearly about degrees of insight. I'm using it as an analogy for the process of working with a client to achieve a very articulate sense of understanding of what it is that they want. This is what I'm imagining would be a kind of an ideal harmonic process of interaction between site builders and clients. And it would be ideal if, as people shift, the other can follow. With Drupal, there's a point where it kind of starts to diverge. This is my hypothesis. It gets to the point where we have to start implementing. So what that means is that the concerns that people have as they collaborate together are more or less harmonious until the point of implementation. And what that gets down to, since we're talking about web pages, fundamentally that means information architecture. So the point of my hypothesis is that I believe Drupal doesn't have a systematic way to define and maintain and build and evolve information architecture. I would like it to be like this, where web pages come out of some kind of natural process that clients as human beings can understand, and that the site builder, whoever they may be, can stay in tune with them and get things done at the same time. That's what I'd like. I'm going to define the terms again. What does business intent mean? Fundamentally is what you're trying to do with a website. Get things done with the people you're trying to reach. Very, very broad definition, but why not start from the outside? So we start with an idea. Let's say we want to do a website for selling cameras and equipment and so on. A cool place. So we have an idea. We know audiovisual, so let's sell stuff to audiovisual producers. Great, that's a good idea. It's a business intent. What can we sell? Well, we think about it a little bit. It doesn't take long, but we can think of all kinds of things to sell. And then we start to articulate that, and ultimately it becomes highly articulated because we've gone into all the details and sub-details. That's great. Then we put all the finishing touches on the content, and the site is looking very good, and we're ready to launch. But what do we really do with Drupal? I listed all the ways that I know of that you can build pages in Drupal. So we go and try and make a menu. Let's add something. One of our segments was pro photography. Great. Save. Oh.
That's right.
What's that?
Yeah, we know this. I know.
I feel your pain. So that's it. Door shut. You're not going to go that route. We build a view. I don't think this is actually making it simpler, but we build a view. And we make it a view page. We push that back out as well. It's the same thing. The information architecture is still a byproduct because that path came after whatever that view was all about, whatever that view was actually retrieving from the database, which is deemed to exist. So what happens, go through that scenario again. We're talking with our clients, and they've got this great idea. We're going to do a website for camera people. Great, let's sell stuff to AV producers. What can we sell? And there's all our segments, the market segments. And we start to articulate it. And then we are asked for content. And it's like hanging apples in space because nothing is there to catch them. We have to start thinking at a whole different level because that's what Drupal wants you to do. We have to push these apples back to the trunk, through these branches, through whatever it is that we're hooking up, down in the bowels. All that stuff gets me thinking about information architecture spaces. I want to explore that a little bit. So the house analogy is really good. It also works because you can look at it in terms of spaces. So this is the process that we have in Drupal right now. The default process that we were just referring to in terms of spaces is you start with the content, then you build the space around it. You start with a node, and you build a usage context around that. And that's information architecture. Kind of opposite to the way you'd actually try to build a house. I don't think anyone would try to sell you on a house by saying, pick out your furniture, and we'll build around that. So all that leads me to think about what I call an inductive pull model. So let's look at it the other way around. What if we built the spaces before we bring in the furniture? This is how I would see it happening. We do it through requests. First of all, we say, okay, in this space, I'm going to request some stuff. And you keep adding. You want to have the central feature, and you add all the details. All the decoration comes after the space is built. That seems very natural. That's the way the world really works. And I'm wondering if this is conscious or not, but a restaurant, we go in, and we start making requests from servers. Where have we heard that before? And that's a great analogy, I think, because really everything about the restaurant is built to provide some kind of content, the content for consumption by the patrons. Yeah, it sounds right to me. But the magic restaurant, the reason why I'm calling it magic is because it actually doesn't exist yet. This is the same restaurant, but in production mode. So we're actually in magic mode, and the menus are empty. So now, as you speak with your client, you have a conversation with them around, well, what do you want on your menu? So this is your client's future website. It's not about consuming, it's about producing the website. So think about that. The restaurant that you go to is about consumption. The restaurant that you haven't built yet, it's about production. Same with websites. So they say, I want to serve these guys. These are my different market segments. So the same thinking, apply it to a restaurant creation. And I'm just going to speculate a little bit about what that might look like. What if Drupal didn't argue if you tried to create a menu? What if you just somehow added them in? There's another one, there's another one. Directly from the client's mouth, as it were. And you just sort of built these empty menus that link to empty pages. And then you click to edit, and you go into one particular empty page, one empty web page, and you start requesting things. So you start adding things in using some kind of a toolbar up there. And I've got just a few simple ones: menu item, static item, dynamic item. Very high level. And what you're doing is you're dropping some kind of object into here as you work with the client. And you say, these are all the things that you want. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. This is what I think is interesting, is that these now are still requests, but they're not requests to the server because we're not consuming, we're producing. They're requests to the site builder. So they become a to-do list for the site builder. So static blocks basically could resolve to nodes, empty nodes. Dynamic content or dynamic blocks resolved probably to views, empty views. And then all the real configuration is done a little bit later on. But you've captured so much about what the intent of the client is. You've kind of done a whole requirement gathering process here whilst building the kind of the outer layer, the outer top level of the actual website. This is Views UI as it is. And under this inductive pull model, you could repurpose things to handle emptinesses. So we know we need empty blocks here, and this is what they're supposed to be doing. So when I come here as a site builder, these are basically saying, oh, Michael, build me one of these, build me one of these, and so on. And that somehow all translates ultimately when you go back to the page. Oh, now there's real things because we did the configuration. So it's a reminder list, but it's integrated completely with the actual mechanism of site building.